Welcome to the Life Makeovers podcast. My name is Cindy D. Whitmer, and I am the Midlife Makeover Coach, helping you turn your midlife into your best life, one step at a time. Through powerful conversations, my own midlife roller coaster story, and over 3 decades of helping people transform their lives through counseling and coaching, I am on a mission to help you create your own definition of success and happiness. Thank you for being here. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Life Makeovers podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Cindy D. Whitmer, and today is your lucky day because I have with me a woman I met through an article, actually, in AARP magazine. Her name is Patti Smith, and she is the founder of Innovating Coaching LLC and a speaker, an author, an entrepreneur, and success coach. And she has a book called What Am I to Do Now? Simple Strategies to Navigate the Unknown and Ignite What's Next in Your Life. And this article she wrote was about the empty nest. And it just resonated with me so much. So I contacted her and we've become friends. And now today we're going to have an exciting, wonderful conversation about empowering women and so forth. But Patti, why don't you tell us even more about yourself? Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Cindy. It's great to be here. And I just love how we just kind of organically connected. So, such is life, right? And I'm so happy to be here. And, the book itself was such a labor of love. It's been kind of on my mind for some years. And, I think what started me on my journey with my book was really my sister passed away at 50 years old. And she left behind 2 kids. One was in middle school and one in high school. And I had a 7-year-old myself. And, it really makes you realize, we don't know how long we have. And it really kicked me in the butt in my second act of life to not just settle. And so, my beginning career was in the fashion industry. There were 2 things when I was young that were the most important thing to me since I was a real little girl was fashion and helping people. And so
that's great.
Yeah, my first chapter was the fashion industry. And in the 80s, Esprit was the big company. And I eventually got my dream job with them and brought me from Michigan to California. And I grew up in a, big family, 6 kids. I was the middle child. So I was always the one that kind of tried to help everybody get along type of thing, just like that typical middle child. So it's just interesting how it's come full circle. And I actually became the caregiver to my sister when she was, terminal. And then that just changed everything for me. And then I went into healthcare for about 4.5 years and eventually into personal development. So I kind of went full circle with the fashion and helping people. And, you just continue to realize how precious life is. I think even the pandemic really was, kind of in everybody's face of, life can just get pulled out from right under you. And so much is about navigating change. And, change seems to be when we're young, I think our first chapter, life is about change. We're wanting to continue to evolve. And I think what happens in our second act is suddenly change becomes like a bad word. It's like, oh, it's just uncomfortable. And the thread throughout my book is igniting your what's next evolution because your what's next, we're supposed to be evolving as we move on in life and transition, right? So that's kind of the thread throughout my book. And that's really kind of my core message is just to continue to find things that, and my word is ignite, that ignite you and that make you feel like, excited about life and excited to move forward. And, so that's kind of a quick version of, kind of how I've evolved and, hopefully we'll continue to.
I love it. Well, I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And sometimes it's the good, the bad, and the ugly that really help us evolve, isn't it? Like you said, it was such a reality check when your sister died so young and you were very hands-on in that process and really watched her even remain active in her life and accomplish goals and everything. I was just so moved by her story and your book around all of that. And it really speaks to what I'm hearing from women too in their second act when they say things like, is this all there is? I have nothing to look forward to now. It's all downhill from here. All we have to look forward to now is aging, illness, death. And it's like, hold on, wait a second. There could be a whole other experience if you will allow it and let yourself be ignited by what you love, what you value, what's important to you. And so, yeah, that's what I'm out here doing too. I'm singing that song all the time. I talk about it in terms of living fully on your terms, and taking lead in
Mm-hmm.
your own life. And I just think it's so important not to be a victim in life, but rather an active, participant in your own life. And
Absolutely.
yeah, what do you find that blocks women a lot that you've worked with?
I feel like what happens a lot, many women are moms as well. But,
Yes,
whether you are or you're not in your second act, maybe it's aging parents, but we take on these responsibilities. And I think,
yes,
life slowly starts becoming about other people. And
yeah,
as women, a lot of us, we start stretching ourselves. And what happens is we put ourselves in the back seat completely. And then we're so used to that it's like our world starts shrinking and our light starts dimming because it's been about everybody else for so long. We forgot what it was like to really go for something we love instead of taking care of everybody. And so I think we lose that, a lot of women lose that balance. And
mhm,
so they lose the confidence, they lose, just they almost don't know what to do. It's interesting when I first meet with women and we're, talking about, getting on a new path of their what's next, and they want to love their life, and a lot of women want to even be involved with more fulfilling work, whether it's
yes,
business or work in the world, philanthropy, what have you.
hmm,
They don't know how to get started because they
yeah,
haven't tapped into that part of them. And so what I find always so interesting is I'll ask them, what would you love? Not what would you like, or what do you think is practical, or what fits into the little
like
box, but
like what do you love?
yeah,
What
what would
set you
just
on
make you just,
fire, right?
yes, want to wake up in the morning? And what they tell me is what they don't want.
Yes.
They
Everybody knows
literally,
what they don't want. Everybody knows
yes,
what they don't want. I
yes,
find that exactly true too. Yes.
yeah. And so how it's like anything. If you're going to if you're going to accomplish something, right, you have to have a goal, right? Think about sports. You want to win something or you want to get the gold medal, whatever it is. But
Uh,
you have a goal. And
yeah,
so you have to have a clear goal before you can start taking action towards the goal. And I
exactly.
think the hardest thing is just getting started and allowing yourself to tap into the imagination like you did when you were young. Because we have
Yeah.
these amazing six mental faculties. We're not really taught about them or how to use them. And
Mhm.
one of them is imagination. And when we're young, we use the imagination in the
Yeah.
way that we're supposed to, looking at possibility. And what we do when we're, I think, in our second act is we use our imagination to imagine worst case scenarios. And
That's
so,
right. Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? So, where your tension goes, energy flows. So, it's about, you want to focus forward. And so, but it starts with you have to have a clear map, a blueprint of what that looks like, just like a dream house, right? If you had an architect and you had the money and you were ready, they're like, we're going to build you your dream house. You'd still say, well, okay, what does it look like? Where is it
Right.
located? I mean, you'd have to be able to let him know, and it's no different about your life. So it's learning to tap into that, and first of all feel like you're deserving of that. It's
Yes.
still, you're worth it, because there's that worthiness stuff that comes along that too. And
Sure.
I think that you've got to be willing to, stand up and say, you know what, until I take my last breath, you know and
Mhm.
and what kind of a role model are you being if you've got kids? It's like they watch you. It's,
Yeah.
when you're little, yes, they listen, but when they're teenagers and getting older, it's what you're doing. And so I think that the best way that you can continue to model for your kids is to actually walk your talk.
Well, and what a relief it is for our adult children when they know we have a life of our own, and
Mm,
we're not just hanging for the moment that they call or when they come by or whatever, that they know, oh, mom is really living. Mom's got a life, she's got interests, she's got friends, she's got whatever, meaningful work, whatever she's got. And so I think the role modeling piece is so important, like you're saying. And also for us to model that aging is okay. It's like it's an okay thing. It's actually there's some pretty cool benefits to be in these later years, but also just that, you know, we don't want them to feel responsible for us to be happy. That's just
yes,
not, yeah, wow. And like you were saying earlier too, like if we don't have a vision for our lives, we cannot create it. And so it's like
exactly.
allowing ourselves to want things, to desire things just because we want them, and really identifying what matters to us. And I am shocked still that many women struggle with this. I mean, it's just it continues to surprise me a little bit that women struggle with this later in their lives. I don't know. It's
Well, I think again that when you start putting yourself in the back seat and that becomes normal, I think you literally lose a part of yourself. And it's
yeah,
about, reconnecting with that part,
yeah,
and not beating yourself up about it, but just saying, okay, it's time for me, and that's okay. And I think your kids really want that too. They, like you said, they don't want that responsibility, but and even navigating change, navigating tough stuff,
mm-hmm,
it's good for your kids to see
mm-hmm,
you navigate things that aren't easy, or you make a decision and it didn't work out. How you navigate that,
yeah,
how, I mean, because we don't always choose. Like I talk a lot about in the second part of my book about living vision driven versus condition driven, right? When you're
yeah,
living toward things that are pulling you forward. And, even on that path, things are going to happen, you know,
sure,
and I think that it's such a healthy thing to show your kids, younger generation,
mm-hmm,
how to fail, because it's okay to fail. As parents, you're, wanting to help your kids and you don't want them to make some mistakes you made. But at the end of the day, they've got to make mistakes. They've got to figure out how to navigate that on their own. And I
yes,
think when they see you doing that, that is that's important. And we have to remember that we're trying to make everything easy for them, but they need to learn how to navigate. And the best way we can show them is for us to navigate it. We're going to see, us mess up or get nervous about something.
yes,
And then sometimes they can actually, like, my daughter is going to be 21 this year in a couple months. And, what's been interesting is, now she's got, sometimes she'll give me advice on things, and it's kind of cool because
yes,
it goes full circle and she feels good about being able to contribute something. And it's funny, when I was writing my book, I had just gotten my coaching certification and I was just starting to get into the the coaching business. And
mm-hmm,
that's when I decided to write my book too, because I knew I wanted to speak and it was just something that was calling me. And I remember, first I thought, I don't know if I can do this. I never saw myself as an author. And even when I said something to my husband, and he's like, oh my gosh, you're going to write a book? He's like, you just started a coaching business. He's like, what do you know about writing a book?
come on,
And
Tommy,
it's,
that's not what we want the answer to be. The
I
response.
know. And
Do
he's
it.
always been so supportive of everything I've done and how I've evolved. I got what he meant, but I thought, okay, I'm just going to keep this kind of, under hat, and we'll see if I really do this. And then, I continued on my journey with it, start and stop. And, when the pandemic hit, I just thought, you know what, if there's ever a time, it's now. It's like now or never. And I did not tell my daughter I was writing a book. And then one day she came into my room during, they were home for COVID, and it was
Oh,
just,
sure. Yeah.
it was definitely not easy. And
No.
she came in my room again, and I'm like, I am trying to write a book. I just need a little bit of peace. And she's like, what? You writing a book? And I thought, oh my gosh, now I really have to fix this book. I'm supposed to be this role model. And you know what was so cool was, when I published the book and I did my first book launch,
Mhm.
she was like, "What can I do to help?" She was just so like, I could not believe, and her and my husband both. I mean, I remember the day I handed him the manuscript. He's like, "Oh my gosh, you really wrote a whole book." And so that kind of takes me to, I have the 7-step system in my book.
Yes.
And since I love that word ignite, it's ignite and then the letter U, ignite you. And the U in the system stands for unite with a new self-image because,
Mhm.
I think that's
Yeah.
the thing as we evolve is we have to, we update our phones, we update our computers, we update, our cars, our wardrobe. Why would we not update how we see ourselves? I love this book, Sacred Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. He was a renowned plastic surgeon back in the 40s. And he found that he says you can never outperform your own self image, but you can absolutely change it. And when I read that book, I thought it is so true. You start updating how you see yourself. Otherwise, you continue to
Yes.
operate in this box. And so look at it as an update. And so,
Like
and
it.
I have something in my book called My Awesomeness Creed. And
Oh,
it's really taking the word awesomeness and using it as an affirmation because I love that word, just like I like ignite. I love the word awesome. I use it a lot. And it's just a word that just makes you feel so inspired inside. And
yes.
so we'll tell women when I'm giving talks and all that is, wouldn't it be cool? Every day you get up in the morning and you get dressed, why not also put on your awesomeness? You know,
Oh,
put,
I love
you
it.
know, and that's the whole point of the awesomeness creed is,
Yeah.
just to have these affirmations where when you walk out the door or you go into your office, you just feel really great. And, you come from a different place when you have that mindset, you know?
Ah, yeah, it's like a suit of confidence or something, right? Just getting your armor on,
Absolutely.
your empowerment armor on to go get out there in the world and do your thing, whatever that is, right?
Oh, I love that empowerment armor. That's a good way to describe it. I love that. Yeah. I mean, there's so much science now behind the mind and body. I mean, I still feel I wish they would teach this early in school because,
Oh, me too.
to help with confidence and, I talk about living vision driven versus condition driven. Our first, when we're young, just getting on in the world. I think we tend to live more vision driven. I think society even kind of supports that. And I think in our second act, we live so much more condition driven. We look
Will you
around at our
define that
circums.
for people? Yeah, will you define
Yeah,
condition driven in case people
condition driven.
do that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Meaning, that we wait for our conditions to dictate how we're going to move forward. Well,
Yeah,
when this happens, then I'll do this. When this, instead of saying no, it's, let your vision be. What would you love? And then
yeah,
start taking actions in that direction,
yes.
because all we need to know is the next step. The
Mhm.
next step leads to the next step. And
Yeah.
I always talk with people when you're, coming up with a vision for your life and look
You
at the different quadrants. Bless
Mhm.
you. Look at the quadrant of health and well-being. I mean, that's always a good place to get started if you don't know where to begin, because who doesn't want good
Yes.
health? So what could that look like to you? And that's emotional health, physical health. Then look at your relationships. And that's not just romantic relationships, but family, friends, community, colleagues. What kind of relationships would you love? What do you want more of, less of? Then have you look at your vocation or your creative expression, work you want to do in the world, just how you want to use your time out in the world, because that's the one thing that we don't get back is time. And we literally, there's a quote that one of my mentors said, and I love this quote. She said, every day is like a lifetime in miniature. It has a
Oh,
beginning and it has an end, and you get to shape it. And that's really, my dad is 94. And he always says when I talk to him, he's like, well, I'm alive at least today. But it's kind of funny because we all can say that because we don't know. I lost my niece at 21 years, almost 21. My mom passed away in 2016. And, 3 weeks later, my niece was killed in a tragic accident. And I mean,
Gosh.
it just was devastating to my family. And, my mom is, oh, it was. And,
Oh,
but again, just like my sister, who had cancer and she passed at 50, it's like you literally don't know what the next day is going to hold. So, you know, time is of the essence and it's what we
yeah.
make of each day. And that's why you're going to be working at something. And so you're either going to be designing your life by your design, your vision, or it's going to be by default. It's like you're going to just keep, reacting to conditions. Well,
Yeah.
I guess, and it's like you're a ping pong ball.
Yeah.
And instead of having intention,
Hmm. For sure.
so
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So again, really taking the lead in that every day and going, what am I going to make today be for me? Like I was with I'm on a board and we had a retreat recently and we talked about my perfect day. We each shared like, what would my perfect day be? And of course we had lots of, dreamy, wonderful aspects to our perfect days. But one of the things that we challenged ourselves when we were done sharing was let's get elements of that in every day of our lives. Like maybe we can't
mm,
all be at the ocean and having our favorite food with all our favorite people every day of our lives, but what does that mean we value? Like how can we do that in our day-to-day life where we're honoring what is super important to us, what we value, what really, like you said, really ignites us, lights us on fire, what we're passionate about, and making sure that every single day we're actually speaking to those things. I mean, that is what gives us a meaningful life. That's what helps us feel like we're really intentionally doing something with our lives instead of, like you said, sitting back and going, well, what's the weather going to do today? Or where's the economy at today? Or how are the other people in my circle behaving today? That'll decide how I'm going to behave, or whatever. And just going for it. Yeah, I could go off on many tangents about this, Patty.
well, and life is not about perfection, but it is about action. And I think when you're intentional, and it really starts with getting one of my steps is getting clear with what you want and why. And the
Yeah.
why is really, why is it important to you? Because, I'll say this when I decided to get my coaching certification, and that was a process in and of itself when I made that decision, but I did, and it was an investment of time and money. And as the minute I made that decision, and my sister had already passed a couple of years. My mom got sick, and suddenly I was on a plane in caregiving with my younger sister and my dad. And I was supposed to be training for this certification. And then, once we got through that, it was nice to have something to focus on that was positive. I was surprised that it didn't take me off track. But then 3 weeks later is when my niece passed, and I was back home, in Michigan. And, plus my dad was still just processing my mom's death. And I kept thinking, is
Yes.
this trying to tell me something? But what I realized was it never took me off the course of wanting to get that certification. Even though things took me, it took me off the course. I really had to focus on what was
Sure.
most important to me at the time. But because
Yes.
this other thing was also important, it was more like the light, and it was a little bit down the road. But I
Yeah.
knew that I had that to get back to. It did something for me. And I want to share a story with you because people talk about, oh, I'm too old. And
Oh, I
I
do
will
that
say this,
all the time too. Yes, I'm too old. It's too late. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, yes. Let's.
that is such a, my dad, okay, my dad was 87 when my mom passed away. My mom was kind of the social challenger for their life.
Okay.
And she was very outgoing. My dad was more of an adventurer, but my mom kind of ran their calendar type of show thing
Okay.
and their social piece.
Uh-huh.
And when my mom passed away, my sister and I were so worried, my younger sister and I, because we thought, oh my gosh, first of all, I've never seen my dad so broken.
Oh,
And we thought he was going to die of a broken heart, honestly.
oh yeah. A lot of
And,
people do at that point.
oh,
You thought
yes.
he was
And
going
he
to sit
was,
in a chair. and just be sad, right?
Oh, he was so, you know what it was, is he was so broken and so lost.
Mm,
Never see my father, who's always been this rock. And
yeah.
then when my niece passed away so tragically, and it was my oldest brother's only child, my dad was like, I don't even know how to process this, right? So
Yeah.
my sister and I were like, there's no way. So my mom died in June, my niece passed away in July. And by the fall of that year, my dad called me one day and he said, Patty, I made a decision. I can either sit here and feel sorry for myself and look at four walls and wait to die, or I can reinvent myself. And I've decided to reinvent myself.
At age
87.
87.
And this is a man who is not Mr. Social, not Mr. I honestly, I thought I misheard him.
What a rock
And,
star.
and you'd say, okay, so how are you reinventing yourself at 87? You know what he did? He taught himself how to cook. He started going to, my mother would not even believe this. He started going through her recipes, messing around, failing, like not knowing what he's doing. Then he'd make something that turned out and he'd bring it to church. He started trying to volunteer, though he hated volunteering. My mother did all that, but he started putting himself in these uncomfortable situations because he made a decision he wasn't going to stay the way he was, because the way he was wasn't going to help him move forward. Not just
Yeah.
that he lost my mom, but that I'm going to have to put myself out there. 87. My dad is now 94 and a half and
Wow.
lives on his own, drives, he's starting to back off on certain things, but there's something that he developed in his 50s because he had a major heart attack in his 50s and he was healthy and everyone was shocked. And I think he realized that it was probably stress that caused the heart attack. So he developed this thing he called his mental switch. And this is not him
Mental what?
studying mental switch. The
Okay,
whole
mental,
family knew it. And
mental
what he
switch.
did, yeah, what he did was when something was aggravating him, whether he was having a conversation with somebody that was setting or somebody was, whatever, the situation just wasn't a healthy one,
Mhm.
he literally would shut it down with his mental switch. He'd say, okay, it's time to turn the switch on or turn the switch off. And he would literally shut the conversation down, walk away, whether it was my mom, the kids, his family,
Wow.
friends. He literally shut it down. Like he said, he literally visualized a switch and it went. And
Oh,
I realized, I really think that's what's helped him navigate
mhm.
that whole next chapter from his 50s to now. And even dealing with my mom and then making that decision was it's a switch. And there's so much about, the mental, the mind and the body and how we
Yes.
what we decide for. And we
Yes.
should decide for us, for how do we focus forward? And it could be little things. I mean, just getting out there and enjoying nature like you and I were talking about before we got on the call today. It's a beautiful day where we both live, and just getting out there and surrounding yourself with things, whether it's hobbies or people, is some kind of environment that just brings you life again. And so
Yeah.
I think that it's it's okay if you're stuck, but it's start thinking about things that light you up. And I'll say this, another step in my system is about embracing gratitude throughout your journey. And
Oh,
if
yeah.
you want to know the easiest way to get yourself out of victimhood, feeling sorry for yourself, low energy, where you just can't seem to crawl out of that rabbit hole, it
Yep.
is about, first of all, think about anything you're grateful for. And if you're breathing, you have that to be grateful for. But
Exactly.
start and do something for someone else. I mean, open a door for somebody, make a call to somebody you think that might, want to hear from you. Do
Yeah.
something because when you take that off of, you know, feeling sorry for yourself and you do something for somebody else, you recognize that you're grateful for something. Start a gratitude journal. I did this with a
Mhm.
client for 30 days where every day we would write down something in the morning that we were grateful for and something in the evening. And then you would read it like every day you'd read what you wrote and then you'd add two more things. So then as you got into the month, you're kind of reading a lot. But it's amazing. It's just the smallest things. You could just be grateful because, something really small happened, but for you it
Yes.
was something and it literally shifts your energy.
Totally. Totally. It does. So I want to put a pin on a couple things and make sure people are capturing all these wonderful lessons that you're sharing through your stories and so forth. So going back to your dad for a second, I love what you said. I mean, here he is, 87 years old. He's lost the love of his life. And then he loses his granddaughter, like kaboom, 5 minutes later, and who's 21. And I mean, there's so much there right there that we could justify laying flat on the couch for the rest of our lives from that right there. I mean,
Hmm.
no one would blame anyone if
Right.
that shut somebody down completely. You, your brother, him, anyone who loved those two people. I mean, kaboom, that's too much. That is so much loss, so dramatically, so in such a short time. And yet he made a decision. It was a conscious decision. He said, I'm going to live. I'm going to get off my chair and I'm going to go do something with my life. It is not going to be okay with me to sit here and just grieve for the rest of my life. Now, you're not saying, I know, and I'm not saying don't grieve, don't be sad, don't miss people. We have to honor those feelings. We've got to. But part of grief is integrating those feelings as we continue to live because we're still here. And thank goodness he made that choice to live, like to really find a life for himself. I really respect him for trying new things, getting out of his comfort zone. Like you said, the cooking, and it wasn't pretty in the kitchen a lot of the time, but he was motivated. He was inspired. He was like, I'm going to do this, even though it's not perfect. It's like modeling imperfection. And then learning to reach out to other people and get connected. Wow. I
That was
mean,
a big one for him.
yes, and there's so much research around our need to belong, our need to connect, our need to contribute, and he knew he needed to do that. And so if a guy can do that at 87 after tremendous loss, we can do it as women in our 50s, 60s, whatever. I mean, there's no excuse for us if he can do that. And he's still thriving at 94, which is pretty impressive. And then you talked about how he talked about the mental switch. And I love
Hmm.
that because we can choose, even in moment to moment to moment to moment. Are we going to go down the negative path or are we going down the positive path? Which way are we going? We can flip the switch anytime and we do not have to engage. So I was with someone the other day that was going down a path and I thought, okay, Cindy, don't join them. Don't join them on this path. You don't like this path. You don't want to go down this slippery slope they're going down. I could have. I've got my own excuses to go down a slippery slope sometimes, right? And I could have.
Hmm.
And then I thought, do I want to join that or do I not? And so I chose not to. And I think that's what you're saying with him, that he would flip his switch or choose shut it down or whatever if he didn't like it. And then gratitude. Oh, everyone did you all catch what Patti said about gratitude? Like daily gratitude for, the simplest, teensiest little things. Like we can always find things to be grateful for. Always and for even if you think you have nothing going your way, if you think your life's a total disaster in every area, you are not looking hard enough. Wasn't it? You have a lot of great quotes in your book, by the way, but wasn't it Thomas Edison who said, if you're looking, if you think you've looked, how did he say that? If you haven't, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm botching this all up. I don't know where that quote is, but he says something like, if you think you've exhausted all possibilities, you haven't, or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember the exact. I mean, I love quotes. I've got them all around my house. My family's always teasing me about them, but to me, they
Yeah.
keep me grounded and they inspire me. One that really sticks with me is by John Maxwell. And this one I love because the saying, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Yes.
He says, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And I think that's the biggest thing about not being afraid to, like put yourself out there like my dad did.
Yes.
Not be afraid to fail because first of all, that's always how we learn. And in any situation, say you even had you messed up. So you
Mhm.
you got into an argument with somebody and you were kind of you felt bad after. The thing is take the learning and
Yes.
then release the rest of the garbage and move forward.
Yes.
Problem is we let all the other garbage just continue to just ruminate and ruminate. And then
Yes.
that just starts becoming our focus instead of just saying, take the learning and move on, or
Yeah.
take the failing and move on. And
Yes. Exactly, because by midlife, especially, we've all had something. We've all been through something. We've all done something. We haven't done something.
oh,
We could
absolutely.
swim in our pool of regrets and guilt and shame. And I mean, we could live there, and some people do. And then, like you
Yeah.
said, they're stuck. And the baggage, the weight of that baggage is so heavy they can't move off of it. And so, yeah, learning to let go of what is no longer serving us. I say to people, catch the lessons, then let it go. Catch the lessons, let it go. Make amends if you think you need to with someone or in some way, and then let it go. But grab the treasures and take them with you forward, because there's so much wisdom that can we can speak to now, that we can take with us. I mean, I think that's one of the greatest things about aging. It's like, wow, if we can capture the lessons along the way, we can be wise gals out there if we
Oh,
really use our
absolutely.
experiences.
That's
Yeah.
it. I mean, life is about the experience. And the longer we've lived on this earth, the more experience we've had, you
Yes.
know? And I think too, to kind of own that, I think sometimes women, because, maybe you haven't put yourself out there for so long, you kind of lost confidence. And it's like, first of all, you have experience in life. You've gone through stuff, like you said. And so, to kind of build from that, because everybody's out there doing the best they can, truly.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what face is put on, but at the end of the day, you get to choose. You get to choose. And there's this one of the talks that I give is called Breaking Through Your Own Glass Ceiling, because
Oh, yeah.
we put these
Love
ceilings
that.
of limitation.
Mhm.
Again, this thing about the self-image, when you decide for like a new way of looking at yourself, you've just raised the ceiling. And so I mean, that saying, you get in your own way, you literally do. It's
Yeah.
not what other people think, it's you.
Exactly.
And so it's like, just put the stake in the ground and make the decision that, what, it's time to move forward and it's time to evolve,
Yeah.
because I'm supposed to evolve until I take my last breath. And, my dad's always the reminder for me, because he's evolved so much and he's continued to evolve. And I mean, there are so many other stories of things that my dad has evolved, even since my mom passed. It's just not to be believed. But you know what? It's a decision and it's a choice.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so, and I think, the audience, and the clientele that you work with, and me, I think we have such a similar bond with, we just want, I think women are literally just getting started in their second act, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think we can, we can be such a sort of supportive community with each other. And, that's another part in my system, is inviting in support of like-minded people and mentorship,
Yes.
because what, sometimes you can feel alone on an island. And I think when you've got a support, like with somebody, just a partner in believing, or just a supportive community of other people who are kind of in alignment with, kind of where you're heading with things, it's amazing, you know, how you can help each other and, lift as you climb.
Just like geese, they fly in that V formation for a reason, because they're the way that they form themselves actually makes their flight easier. How the air flows and the everything makes it easier when they go together. And there's one in the front, and when that one gets tired, they simply drop back, and the next ones come forward and lead. And it's like that with our support systems, right? Sometimes we need to take the lead and be the stronger ones or the more present ones or whatever. And then at times it's like we got to drop back and go, hey, I need your support now. And that's the best kind, is that mutually satisfying, mutually helpful kind of partnership, whether it's our friends, it's our colleagues, whether you're hiring a coach, whether, who knows, whatever, who's ever on your team. But definitely, yeah, you want to surround yourself with people who lift you up, lift you up and make life easier, not make it like more of a struggle and a stress. And I think that's one thing that's hard for people in the second act too, is they've been in some long relationships that have been toxic. They don't understand the weight of that and how much that's burdening them, and it's there's such history, it's hard to know how to let go. And so yeah, I go through that a lot with people too, like how to sort out how to put stronger boundaries around some of those more difficult relationships, or cut them off, or whatever they need to do. And I mean, that's a whole other podcast. You and I could go on all day long, couldn't we, Patti?
We could. Well, and just to dovetail off of something you said about, sometimes you just have to cut things off. And I know it's especially hard if it's friendships that you've had a long time, maybe you've outgrown them, or sometimes family. And there's something I reference in my book, and I think it's really served me, is sometimes you need to just bless and release. You know,
Yes, bless and release, bless and release. Yeah, say more about that.
well, and bless and release, because you can't change somebody. You can't control how somebody's going to be, but you can always decide what you're going to do with it. And it's not even for you to judge. It's just
No.
sometimes you need to like have boundaries or create more space, or sometimes you just need to walk away. But it doesn't mean there's got to be animosity. And if you come from this place of bless and release, you've sometimes there's seasons and reasons, right? People
Yeah.
that come in and out of your life, and sometimes it could be many years, but at the end of the day, you have to think about, your health and well-being. And sometimes there's toxicity will
Yeah.
toxicity will manifest a disease. I've watched it with
For
my
sure.
own two eyes. And and this would be a whole nother podcast too. I talk about this in my book too, is
Mhm.
forgiveness.
Oh
And
yes.
people, I think the power of forgiveness is so underrated, because I think people have a hard time understanding forgiveness. And forgiveness is not about letting people off the hook. It
That's
doesn't
very
make it,
misunderstood concept. Very
but it,
misunderstood concept.
but yeah, but it's about letting, because when you hang on to, like, when you can't forgive, you are hanging on to toxic
Yes.
energy. You're hanging on to, when you're stressed and hanging on to that toxicity over time, it manifests as disease. And it's that's that bless and release. It's like, you know what? Seasons and reasons. And this way you can just move forward. And just some people you've just got to separate yourself from, or even a situation, or even sometimes you've got to let bless and release yourself,
Oh, for
you know?
sure. Yes. Give ourselves grace, self compassion. Oh my gosh, it's so important. It's so important. And when we can give ourselves grace, we can give others grace much more easily as well. And like you said, forgiveness
Absolutely.
isn't saying it was okay. It's not saying the person isn't responsible for what they did. It's a way of letting go yourself so you can be free of the past and just let
Yeah.
yourself live now and forward.
Exactly. It's freeing. It
So
actually,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I could go on and on and on with you, Cindy.
Me too, Patti. I could talk to you all day long, all week long. So I really appreciate the conversation. I guess we better wrap it up. But those of you that are watching on YouTube, this is Patti's book, What Am I to Do Now by Patti Smith, Patti Smith. And where can people find you, Patti? Like if they want to hunt you down, where would you like to direct them? And we'll put all this in the show notes too, but let's hear it.
Yes, my website is pattysmithcoaching.com. Patty's with an I. And my social is at Patti Smith Coaching. So,
Okay.
and I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So, and I invite any of you who want to put on your awesomeness every morning to go to my website, pattysmithcoaching.com, and download. I have 11 affirmations. And what it is it's my awesomeness creed, taking the word awesomeness, and it's 11 affirmations. And I'm telling you, and it's printed out on something pretty that you can, put in your office or put in your bathroom, whatever. And I think when you read that, you are going to feel so empowered, and you're going to feel just like you put on an amazing outfit. I'm putting on my awesomeness this morning. And so I'd love to, share that with you.
Oh, that is so generous. What a lovely gift that is going to be for sure. Everybody go get that at pattysmithcoaching.com. And I'm just going to give you one little glimpse of that awesomeness creed. Okay. So the first one is be authentic. So the A, so she has one of these for every letter in awesomeness, right? Authentic, be authentic and true to what lights me up. I mean, if you start there, there's nowhere to go but up. Honestly, like if we're authentic, we let ourselves be ourselves and go for what we really get excited about, that's a game changer right there. And there's like 10 other ones on your list there. So I really appreciate you offering that to our listeners. I hope they'll take you up on it for sure. And gosh, thank you so much for your wisdom and your stories and your insights. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Cindy, it was so much fun. I appreciate it. And one thing I want to leave the audience with is this. Start today and just know that you matter. You matter.
Yes.
And today's a new day and it's whatever you want to make of it. And there's something inside of you. I know there's a light that just is begging to be ignited. And I celebrate your journey on your what's next evolution.
Oh, beautiful. All right. Well, whew, you heard it here. Thank you, PattySmithCoaching.com. And I will talk to you all again soon. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Life Makeovers podcast. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast with those that you think would also benefit from what we're doing here. And I will talk to you again soon.